there's a story where Sayyidina, after the passing of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidina Bilal could not handle, being. He couldn't handle being in Medina. It was just too heavy on his heart. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr was the Khalifa, and he said to him, "Please let me go out in the way of Allah. Let me join those Murabitun who are in the Levant, in Sham." So Sayyidina Abu Bakr said to him, "No, I can't let you go. I need you here." So Sayyidina Bilal said to him, "Listen, if you freed me, when you freed me," because the one who freed Sayyidina Bilal was Sayyidina Abu Bakr. He said, "If you freed me when you freed me to be your servant, to be your personal slave, then I will remain here. But if you freed me sincerely for the sake of Allah, then you let me go." So Sayyidina Abu Bakr said, "No, of course I freed you for the sake of Allah, so go." So Sayyidina Bilal left, and many years later, the Prophet came to him in a dream, and he said, "Ya Bilal, ma hadha al-jafa?" "Oh Bilal, what is this cold shoulder you're giving me? Why haven't you all this time and you haven't come and visited me?" And Sayyidina Bilal just was shook by this dream, and he immediately rushed, and he came to Medina. And the first people to see him enter were the beloved grandchildren of the Habib Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Hassan and Hussein. And they saw him, and they were so happy to see him because they loved him so much. They saw him all those years making adhan, all those years in Medina making adhan, standing. And subhanAllah, even the conquest of Mecca, when he stood on the Kaaba, it was such a momentous occasion during the conquest of he stood on the Kaaba and made adhan. And he was the mu'adhin of al-Habib Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his beautiful voice, and they saw him walking in, and they were so happy to see him. They rushed to see him. They hugged him and they kissed him. And they begged him to make adhan. And he said, "No, I can't. I cannot. It's too much. It's too heavy." And they begged him, "Please, please, we need you to make adhan." And the Prophet ﷺ would love to hear your adhan. So he climbed up on the house, one of the companions' houses, and he started to make adhan. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And he kept on making adhan until he reached Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. And he just started to cry profusely. And slowly, with every part of the adhan, people would come out from their homes. And now they're all witnessing Sayyidina Bilal making the adhan. And when he reached to Sayyidina Muhammad, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, he cried overwhelmingly. And he just could not get it. He couldn't come out because of how much the tears overwhelmed him. And that moment, just it's a profound representation of the loving heart of a follower, of a companion, of a humble servant of Al-Habib Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who just loved to be in his company and to do it. Every time Sayyidina Bilal would make the adhan, he would take the permission of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He couldn't imagine making adhan without taking permission from Al-Habib Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. How can I speak? How can I make this call without the permission of Al-Habib Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? And subhanAllah, brothers and sisters, I pray that Allah, that He gifts us hearts that really, really long for Him, and that just love to have His company and to abide by His commands. These companions, they loved Him, and their hearts sung for Him, and their hearts fluttered for Him and longed for Him and yearned for Him. And He loved them deeply, and they loved Him deeply. And the Prophet ﷺ loves us, by the way, because he says, "Ashtaqu ila ikhwani." I long for my brothers. I long for my brothers. I long for my sisters. He longs for us. How much do we long for Him? How much do we really long for His company, long for His graceful touch, His beautiful face, His beautiful words, His guidance? How much do we long for Him? How much do our hearts care about Him? Do we think about Him? How often do we think about Him? These companions, they lived every day, and He was their orbit. Every single day. That was the integrity of their faith. Their ubudiyah was to see Him and to follow Him and to take from Him the guidance from the divine. And Allah made it that our theology is really, the fullness of its integrity is how much we love Sayyidina Muhammad, because the Prophet says you can't be a believer or a complete believer until I'm more beloved to you than your children, than your spouse. We sit here, we lose our minds over our kids. We do things that we shouldn't do. We feel in ways that are exaggerated. We take actions so much. Why? Because we love our children. We'll do anything for our children. And we're head over heels in love with the ones that we love. What is the integrity of our love for Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? You know, if I'm supposed to love the Prophet more than I love myself, love my parents, love my children, do I? Do I love him that much? You know, do I know his life? You know, the Sahaba, they knew his life and they lived with that life, and the Tabi'een, they knew that the life of that beloved, and those that followed thereafter, and they were connected until today. There are lovers, deep lovers. They know the Prophet's names, they know the Prophet's spouse's names, they know his children's names, they know his entire life, every part of it. They know how he looked, they know his qualities, his characteristics, his unique traits. They know him. And the reason they love him is because of how much they know him. And that's why they're the best and most beautiful of followers of him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam.